Hi. Hi, I'm Mischa, and I've been studying Jewish kids in New York City in the 1930s through 40s. So, most of my information has come from my grandparents, Mimi Aarons, Jerry Weinstein, and Ira and Judy O'Keefe, who are all Jewish, and they all grew up in New York City during this time period. Judy and Ira both lived in the Bronx, and Jerry and Mimi both lived in Brooklyn. My grandparents all spent a lot of their time as children playing street games outside with the neighborhood kids on the weekends and after school. So this is my grandpa Jerry. This is currently, we couldn't find any pictures of him when he was a child. He was born in 1928 and he lived in Flatbush, Brooklyn. Flatbush mostly consisted of Jews, and there were no black or Latin American people, but about a mile away there were some Irish families. So this is my grandma Mimi, who also lived in Brooklyn, and she was born in 1934. On her street and in her neighborhood, East New York, there were Italian, Jewish, Polish, and African American people. There was one family that was African American and that had 7 daughters. Mimi would often play with them in their home, but her father never allowed them to come into his home. So this is a map of Brooklyn. Jerry lived in Flatbush and Mimi in East New York. And this is my grandpa Ira, he was born in 1941, and he lived in Longwood, which is in the Bronx. It was not very mixed in terms of culture, but there was more diversity than there was in Jerry's neighborhood. There were a lot of Latin American people as well as Jews. This is Judy on the left with her sister Vicky. She was born in 1943, and she lived on Harrison Street in University Heights, which is mostly made up of lower and middle class Jews. So this is a map of the Bronx. You can see where they lived, and Ira lived in Longwood up until he was about 12, and then moved to a spot a little north of Pelham Parkway. So while I was interviewing Judy, Ira, Mimi, and Jerry, I realized that there were a lot of games that they played in common and that they had in common. So some of the games I heard and read about were played by all my grandparents and other kids as well. So most of them played stickball. Judy, Mimi, and Jerry all played hopscotch, or as Mimi and Judy called it, potsy. And Judy and Mimi both jumped rope. Judy and Ira both played salugi, that was also called king, queen in other parts of the city. Red light, green light was played by both Ira and Mimi, and along with Judy, Mimi also played A My Name's Alice. So my grandparents also had other games that they liked to play that my other grandparents didn't know of or didn't play. So this is Ira, the little one in front, with his older brother Arnie. And Ira told me that they liked to make bows and arrows for fun out of thin tree branches, and he would shoot arrows directly above him, figuring that they would never come right down on him, and they never did. He also liked to make and experiment with flares, and in the summer he sometimes tried to shoot arrows through open-windowed trolleys, and thankfully he never hit anyone. Most of the games that Judy played seemed to be the games that only girls played, like jump rope, A My Name is Alice, and hopscotch. And this is girls jumping rope or doing double dutch. She also told me that she didn't play stickball or handball, that she and other girls watched the boys play them, unlike Mimi, who played stickball with the boys and girls. So there were also a few games that Jerry played that Judy, Ira, and Mimi didn't play. So Jerry played street hockey on roller skates, and this is not him, but other kids playing street hockey on roller skates in Manhattan. And he played touch football and even participated in wars between kids from his street and kids from another street nearby, using crab apples for weapons. So, Mimi also played hit the penny, giant, and stoop ball, or hitting flyers, where you try to hit the edge of the stoop. And in the winter, some kids, mostly boys, would do something called belly whopping, where you would run, jump, and plop down on your stomach and slide down a hill. And I saw that most of the games that my grandparents played were the most common games that were played by Jewish and non-Jewish kids alike. But there were a few other games that I ran into, such as kick the can, ring a levio, off the wall, and half ball. So my grandparents also played many games and watched television, and it was all very different from today's TV and games. So for example, my grandma Mimi's mother taught her how to sew and make dolls' clothing. Mimi didn't have a television until she was a teenager, unlike Ira, who did. And Ira watched Hopalong Cassidy, Howdy Doody, which is pictured, and Pinhead. He also played marbles with a cigar box and card games. So Judy said that when there was bad weather, her and the girls from her building would get together in the lobby and play board games like Clue. But Jerry did indoor entertainment a little differently. So he had no television. They had just been invented, and not many people had TV sets, but he listened to lots of radio. Jerry also played Monopoly and card games like Go Fish. When he bought cards, they had packs that came with a stick of gum for just 1 cent. So, kids and teenagers' jobs back then were much different from teens' jobs today. Kids would work when they were young, maybe for their parents after school or on the weekends. As a child, Ira would sometimes work for his mother, turning dolls' clothing inside out after his mother had sewn them together. Jerry also had a number of jobs when he was a teenager. In high school, he was working in a drugstore getting paid 25 cents an hour. In college, he worked at the first ever Macy's as a salesman, getting paid 75 cents an hour. And he got to march in the Macy's annual parade as a toy soldier who was guarding Santa Claus. And this used to be called the Macy's Christmas Day Parade, but now it's the Thanksgiving Day Parade. So, I have also learned so much over the last few months about my grandparents' Jewish experiences as children, and so they are. So, this is Mimi. On the left, she's with her sister Edna and her mother Molly, and on the picture on the right, Mimi's on the far left with her mother, sister, and her father George. So she went to Hebrew school when she was 9 or 10, and she had become a Girl Scout before she started Hebrew school. And one day, Mimi went into class with her uniform on, and the Hebrew school teacher asked her where her shoot meant. She replied, telling her that they met in a church, and the teacher thought it wasn't right for a Jewish girl to meet in the church, so she humiliated Mimi in front of the whole class, and she never went back to Hebrew school again. So she only went to the temple on the high holidays, Yom Kippur and Rosh Hashanah, where Mimi, her mother, and her sister Edna sat upstairs in the ladies section while her father sat downstairs with all the other men. Every Friday night, Mimi's family would light candles for Shabbos, the Yiddish Shabbat, and Mimi's mother would make boiled chicken. So Jerry's Jewish experience. So Jerry went to Hebrew school for 5 years, 4 days per week. Jerry had his bar mitzvah at the Flatbush Jewish Center. He also belonged to a Jewish Boy Scout troop. So on the left, it's a picture of Boy Scouts in the street in Manhattan. And so one time the boys were trying to earn their cooking badges, and they each had to cook something. Jerry, of course, decided to cook latkes, or potato pancakes, and naturally he took the longest, shredding and peeling all the different ingredients. And by the time he was done, all the boys had already finished their cooking. Sis Judy on the far left with her mother, Esther, and her sister, Ricky. And she was secular as a child, and her parents didn't go to temple, so they were fine with it when Judy went to Hebrew school for one day, didn't like it, and never went back. On the high holidays, Judy and her friends would gather outside the temple, all dressed up. So, last is Ira. Ira went to, on the left, on the left, playing cards with his younger brother David, and on the right, it's him at his bar mitzvah. So, yeah, he went to Hebrew school for 3 days a week after school. He also had a bar mitzvah. Ira's family went to temple often, but not every week. They went to temple on the high holidays, and every Friday they practiced Shabbat. As a kid, Ira's religion was a big part of his life, but he wasn't very interested, actually not at all, in Judaism or any religious matters. So, there have been a few main ideas and themes that I have taken from doing this project and interviewing my grandparents. One theme I have taken from this project is that in neighborhoods where there was any diversity, kids of all different races from all different backgrounds, religions, and ethnicities played together. All the kids played the same games and used a Spalding or Spalding ball. Another idea I took from this project is that life then was just so much different from lives today. Here where we live today, kids barely play in the streets, but way back then in New York City, in almost all of their free time, kids would play in the street with the other kids from their street or from their building. Also today, kids watch a lot of TV in their free time when they're outside. But back then, kids would listen to the radio, sew, do experiments, beading, so many more interesting activities that barely any people do today in their free time. This project has taught me so much more about my grandparents and their lives growing up, and it was also really fun to interview them. So thank you so much.
Well, I just want to express our thanks, first of all, to Gabby Goodman, the wonderful teacher of design class. She's done a great job. And I'd like all the kids to come up and just stand in front of the stage. I think we need another big round of applause. And I just feel exceptionally proud of all of you. It's such a wonderful job. And I really can't wait to the bar bat mitzvah ceremony in May to hear what these kids have to say about their own Jewish identity. So please join us for some light refreshments outside, and thank you again for coming.